What is up, my friends? Welcome back to the Home Slice. Bit of a story. And the story is this. Sometime after my recent test with Pete at Cedric and Ada, the MagnaCut test where the MagnaCut mule performed very, very well, I received communication from Sal Glesser. And if that is hard for you to believe watching this video, just know that it has been much harder for me to believe. I've been telling people in reference to this, it's quite funny because when you have a hobby or a pursuit, there's like names that you know, right? Like I know of like Sean Houston and admire him. I know of Sal Glesser and Cliff Stamp and Vadim Krajicek, but in the functioning of my everyday life, those are just names. They're sort of like legends. I don't think of them as like people just rocking around in the world. You know, I'm like, oh yeah, Sal Glesser, founder and CEO of Spyderco. Pretty sure he invented the pocket clip and has been pushing steel research to new heights for like the last 3 or 4 decades. He's epic. That's just my opinion. But I'm nowhere in my conception of life or my plans to actually communicate with or meet Sal. But lo and behold, on the Science of Sharp article on dual grit sharpening, which is a whole nother thing, like I never planned to meet Todd from Science of Sharp, and it's been an incredible honor just to get to like do a few things collaboratively where I'm just involved with his work. So fun, so cool. But similarly to that, there was a comment that came up on the Science of Sharp where the name is Sal Glesser, and he says, good work, Todd and Gabe. If you want to experiment with any other exotic steels that Spyderco currently manufactures, then contact me and give me a message and we'll talk about it. And so I like when that happens, like, so you just do that. You're like, yes, I would love to contact you if you are willing to hear from me. And so I did. And I reached out to Sal, and it was such a cool experience. He's like a normal guy on one hand, but really cool that somebody who's been in things that long, he comes across to me, he's just not trying to win, you know? He really cares that his end users enjoy their products and that the overall innovation of the industry is pushed forward. That's actually his MO. He's not just interested in making a name for himself or making more money or winning whatever success is, you know, defined. Anyway, my admiration for Sal aside, I am pleased, very, very pleased to announce that Spyderco, Sal Glesser and his director of sales, marketing, Alex, have sent me a box full of wonderful things. I got a 2-sided CBN bench stone from them for research purposes, which is so cool. And I got 5 or 6 different models of knives, and I'm not going to tell you what they all are. You'll just have to be surprised when they come up in the testing. But I just want to say a huge thank you to Sal and Eric and Alex and everybody else at Spyderco, which is currently kind of understaffed because of COVID and all the crazy changes in the world. I just want to say you guys are awesome. You're doing a great job. Thanks for looking towards innovation. You guys inspire me. It's really cool. Down to the point of this video, I have before me a serrated H2 Spyderco Salt. In my conversation with Sal, he was like, hey, you do rope cut testing, you want to try something fully serrated, would that be interesting to you? And I was like, absolutely, that would be interesting to me. What do you recommend? I kind of came down to this idea that it would be cool to test a steel that is on the softer side to more directly compare with the results that I've got from the Victorinox knives. It's going to be so sad to ruin this beautiful serrated edge, or at least partially ruin. Who knows how the test might go. But it will be really valuable data of what difference do serrations make in a rope cut test like this. You got a hollow grind and some good serrations, so we should be able to expect some different results, and I think probably quite good results. Maybe if I continue to interact with Spyderco, then down the track I'll have them send me something in nicer steel, or a couple things, maybe one that I could test on the death rope, and maybe one that I could actually carry, because I've never carried a fully serrated blade, and I'm about to at least partially ruin this one, and I don't have a good way of resharpening it, so that's a bit of a bummer. But we're going to take this sucker and put it through the death rope after we test the best. It may be very difficult to test the best on a serrated knife because of the extreme angle changes, but I'll try to saddle it right in the middle where it's flat of one of those scoops, one of those teeth, and get just a sort of general best reading, and then cut the rope and test it again just to see what kind of apex loss. I know the cutting ability will probably still be there somewhat because serrated blades are famous for cutting when they're not sharp, but I'd like to know how sharp it is still, because I think that'd be a valid data point. Well, as the legend goes, the Wharncliffe blade, the curved nose, was made that way, the curved tip, was made that way because they were concerned that sailors might get drunk and stab one another, and so they did it to make the tip less dangerous. As it turns out, the tip is still very capable of cutting on this knife, and just cut me in that little flap of skin between my thumb and index finger. It's not actually that bad. It's just a little bit deep, and there's kind of a vein right there, so I needed a little pressure, so Anyway, I'm confident this is going to finish cutting the death rope. Let's finish up. Well, that's very cool. I don't know what you expected, but I didn't expect it to be maybe that easy. I wouldn't say actually that it was effortless, I had to work hard to get through the rope, but the serrations make a huge difference. And I think that if there's one thing that you could take away from a test like this, it is that there are some tasks, at least this one, for which simply putting some serrations on the end of a knife will actually do you as much good as upgrading to CPM MagnaCut or CPM M4 or other knives that I've tested, or Maximet, which have made it through this rope with a plain edge. There are some tasks for which a serrated edge is better. I already knew that. I'm not incredibly surprised by that, but it's pretty mind-boggling that that one spot in this serration started out at 247 and ended at 257. Like, I'm pretty confident this knife in H2, bear in mind, which gets a bad rap for being kind of soft, I'm pretty sure this could actually go again and could cut through the whole death rope again. Now, that said, it was a lot of work to get through this. It was really messy because this blade kind of tears through the ropes and you go back and forth and it made a mess of the ropes. So sometimes I cut through them more than once and there's a bit of fluff and I had to pull it apart, and it was a little bit harder than a plain edge kind of creates a bit more of a clean surface. But I also kept it rubber banded, so I guess that's not a super fair comparison, because in the past I've just pulled the fibers off. Anyway, I don't know how serrated knives usually cut paper, or if they do. Tell me, serrated guys, do serrated knives usually cut paper? I feel like they don't. Well, that was a dumb test. Obviously, I don't know what I'm doing. But I think very cool results. Beat the death rope by physics alone. You know, sometimes you don't need steel, you just need a little sometimes you just need a bit of advantageous microphysics working in your favor. How cool. This is probably still sharp enough to carry, so maybe I will carry this and give Sal my thoughts, because I feel like that would be kind of honoring of him. I thought it might be interesting to see what kind of numbers Spyderco is running as far as behind the edge thickness on their serrated edges. It's looking fairly big, but let's find out. Okay, so it's binding up before it quite gets to the edge at 28. And at 31, it's sliding just a wee bit past the edge. So 29 or 30, I'd say that 31's closer, so it's probably about 30 thousandths behind the edge. All done with the test with this H2 Salt serrated knife. And I've just had a few minutes to reflect on it. And the first thing that I want to say is that all of you guys who are like, you've got to try a serrated blade, you can just feel free to have a well-deserved I told you so moment down in the comments. I will willingly receive all of the I told you so's. You were right. The second thing that I will say is that if any super steel had cut through that death rope and only lost 10 grams on the best number, it would have been unbelievable. It would have been like the best result ever. Everything loses like 200 grams minimum, usually more than that, getting through that death rope. So 10 grams is pretty insane. And I recently got a digital HD microscope and I checked the edge, and in the wells of the serration there are a few little microchips, but there is remarkably little damage on this, like remarkably. And I think that I would sort of surmise that a steel like H1 or your simple steels that are, when they're well hardened, might actually be a really beneficial steel to choose for serrations, because they can flex without breaking, and they would give greater control to microchipping. And honestly, with serrations, I don't know that you need the apex all that sharp for them to function. You just need them to not take really large amounts, unreasonable amounts of damage. So you guys can, this is my first experience, so this is all conjecture. If you guys are like, no, like S30V and K390 fully serrated is the best thing ever, it's way better than H2, then you could drop me that in the comments as well, because I'd be keen to hear, like, what is your guys' experience? Do you have better experiences with simple steels serrated, or do you have better experiences with very highly technical powder steels? Okay, sorry this video is getting long, but I just had a crazy experience that I have to share. I still have these little tabs of kangaroo leather kicking around, and I was like, oh, is there any way that I could resharpen this serrated edge? But it felt pretty hopeless with all my stones and stuff. I just don't have the gear. You'd need to, like a buffing wheel or something, to really get this thing sharp again. But I simply pressed, I stropped this whole side flat on the pure chromium oxide, just simple chromium oxide, and then I just pressed on the corner of the table to form the leather around the serrations and found the angle that they're at, and one by one just gently stropped them with chromium oxide on kangaroo leather. Of course, if you did this to something that wasn't like a leftover scrap from a video, it probably would ruin your piece of kangaroo leather, so I mean, bear that in mind. but just to give like a rough idea of like, is this edge, can it be brought back? Now check this out. Okay, this is my best machine, and I gotta get set back up so I can test this. Just a second. Okay, now bear in mind that this thing came from Spyderco at 247 grams, measured in the middle of this serration, which I'm about to measure to the middle of again. 247. Just went through the entire death rope, so keep that in mind as well. And has only been stropped a bit to bring the edge back. I double tested at 247 grams. I tested once off camera and then tested once on camera. 137. Guys, look at that. It's at 137 off a strop after the death rope. I just have to say, Sal, serrated edges are brilliant. This is so cool. This is so cool. Anyway, thanks for tuning in to this funny episode. If you want to check out the last death rope test that I did, which was a custom CPM 10V knife with a kind of stropped fine edge, that's on screen now. For all the rest of you, I will talk to you later. Peace out.